good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Igniting Hope Radio. I am one of your hosts, Sherman Webb-Middlebrooks, a lifelong Buffalo resident, full-time black man. I am also the Men's Mental Health Project Manager here at the Buffalo Center for Health Equity, and we have an amazing episode for y'all today. I'm going to go ahead and keep us rolling, kick it right over to one of my co-hosts for this episode, the good brother Joel Nicholas.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for having me today, man. Thank you. Today I have the honor and the privilege to introduce our special guest. Today we have the one and only brother Sabu Adeola in the building. Yes.
Yeah,
Let's all clap it up for that.
Thank you.
I'll give you a little quick intro and backstory on this legendary brother right here. He was born in Buffalo, protege of the legendary Charles Mingus. What? Sabu carved his name early in jazz history. A virtuoso bassist, he's perhaps best known for his soulful, spiritual swing, right? With the acclaimed Ahmad Jamal trio, and alongside drummer Peyton Crossley, and breathing fresh life into Jamal's iconic sound. Sabu's artistry extends far beyond one trio, though. He shared a stage in the studio with jazz greats spanning Abbey Lincoln, Dexter Gordon, Pat Metheny, Gary Burton, Grover Washington Jr., Randy Weston, Roy Haynes, oh my goodness, and more. From the Village Vanguard to Massey Hall and back and forth, and then end back home at the Finger Lakes Jazz Festival. And so his performances carry undeniable presence, that's for sure. At its core, Sabu's playing is deeply spiritual and rooted in ancestral African heritage. That profound connection manifests in a communal, transcendent musical interplay that has captivated audiences worldwide. A native of Buffalo, Sabu not only studied local institutions, but now enriches them, serving as an adjunct jazz bass instructor at the University of Buffalo's Department of Music, and with over 50 years of marriage. Wow. Is that true? Oh my.
56.
56.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
I got married when I was 10.
With 7 children,
Wow.
18 grandchildren.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh man. His life is as rich and layered as his bass line. So now I have the honor and privilege to give you brother Sabu Adeola.
Word.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Somebody did a lot of research.
Did that cover it?
yeah, pretty much.
I'm sure there's some accolades missing there.
Actually, yeah. So, well, thanks a lot for having me here.
Appreciate
Such a pleasure and an honor to be a part of this ongoing health consciousness. You know, that's been one of my real deep interests going back. You know, when my mother sent me to music lessons at the age of 8, I was not with it. I didn't like it. I thought music was for girls. You know, because all the musicians I had seen at church, like my aunts and my cousins, they were all female. You know, the organ, playing piano and stuff like that. And so she said, no, that's not true. The best musicians in the world are men, you know. And I said, well, I ain't never seen none, you know. So one day I was in my yard playing, you know, probably with sticks or something. We didn't have screens in those days, you know.
Okay.
So my older sister comes running out and she says, Mom says, come quick, right now. And, you know, I said, so I go running in there, and we had a old black and white TV. Yeah. And Louis Armstrong was on there, you know.
Yeah.
She said, see, he's the best, you know. No, that's Dizzy Gillespie.
That's Dizzy.
Yeah, that's Dizzy, yeah, with the frog cheeks.
Yeah, with the frog.
And neck later on the year. Started expanding his neck too.
Okay.
Crazy. But
Louis Armstrong is the great granddaddy of our music.
Absolutely.
I mean, he got it from Buddy Bolden, who is considered to be the first jazz musician. But they were all from New Orleans. But Buddy Bolden didn't live very long. He had health issues too, you know. In fact, he was consigned to an asylum, and for they said mental place, and he actually died there. He was young. I think he was in his 40s.
Oh my God.
But he's considered to be the first jazz musician.
Wow.
So this thing about health,
Get off right.
and wellness goes back to the
Naturally.
very beginning.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Very beginning. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So,
Yeah, he's touching on like all the points,
yeah.
man. It's exactly what we're doing.
it'll be a great conversation. Before we get into this wonderful conversation, I want to take a break for our sponsors, the Buffalo Center for Health Equity, as well. And all right, so now that we're back from our break, let's talk a little bit about what we have upcoming. So I know we have an event that's coming up on the 28th. So if you can also tell, we are also joined by Gia. You want to tell the folks who we are and a little bit about our event that we have coming up?
Yeah,
Gia?
absolutely. So I feel an immense amount of pride and excitement for an event that we have planned at the end of this month. I feel like it marries a couple of our specialties, our unique skills and talents as a team at the Buffalo Center for Health Equity, and really, and our passions and our interests. And we've had ongoing work going on with the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, which is a nonprofit that's based out of Washington, D.C., and for the past 6 months, and that will be wrapping up at the end of this month. But we will continue to work with them as well as in conjunction with No Menthol Buffalo and Stan Martin. And all a part, Stan the Man, and all a part of our efforts to push for a menthol ban in the city of Buffalo. That is our ultimate goal, and we will see that day, and I'm very excited to see that day and to continue to do the good work for something that has led to disease and chronic conditions and disproportionately affected a slew of people, but especially African Americans. Lung cancer is the leading cause of preventable death. It remains that way. Lung cancer, again, I always plug the statistic. Lung cancer takes more lives than the next 3 cancers combined. So it's preventable. And so, again, we've been doing a lot of work in the space and a lot of work on our Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids contract in the last 6 months. And what a way to kind of close out this first initial contract with them, I thought, and kick off the summer than by doing a jazz event. And at the root of this jazz event, which now I'm like building it up, the title is Jazz and Justice, Reclaiming the Sound, with a slogan that we just really kind of naturally came up with yesterday in talking, it's not cool anymore. And the cool is
K.
with a K, exactly. It's KOOL. And I want to explain a little bit about like the roots, because it's not just, we don't want this event to be like every other health fair event that we see in the nonprofit space where, health fairs are great and free community events are wonderful. But there's a strong message behind the reason that I wanted to do this with the help of Stan and with the help of Joel and the rest of my team that will be helping, and then which led us to Brother Sabu here. But the message really is kind of a take back, a reclaiming again of the music, of the genre of jazz, which for viewers who don't know, there's a long-standing history between the relationship between jazz music and the tobacco companies and tobacco industries. Decades ago, some of the largest jazz festivals in the world, not just nationally, were sponsored by tobacco companies. And so like our everyday flyers that we create and generate, those flyers were sponsored and had like Cool cigarettes. Cool was one of the largest cigarette companies that sponsored those events. And what's the phrase that they would use? It's one of them, or there was many.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about it being smooth or
Yeah.
cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
They just sold it as being something
And that's how
you got to be hip to.
Yeah, and how everything was marketed made folks looking all happy and chilling with that, and that green, that menthol green.
Absolutely. And the message was it's cool to smoke, and they really, I feel like, they really exploited the genre of jazz. They really exploited African Americans. They targeted them. They marketed them. They still do. We know that. That's part of the work that we do and the reason we do it now today. But, of course, they no longer sponsor jazz festivals, but that went on for too long.
Right.
And another piece of this that Joel and I kind of workshopped in the inception of this idea was that there's kind of maybe a twofold or multifold avenue here, which is there was many of the greats jazz musicians that were also personally impacted by being smokers themselves, so by tobacco. So really like marrying that idea, and my idea of it is as a genre that I've fallen in love with so much, and I feel I'm not a musician myself. I always say that I'm not a musician myself by any means. I have no musical talents whatsoever. I'm just a fan, and I feel like there's a lot of identity, and especially as a Black person and a Black woman, that I find wrapped up in there, and a lot of soul. And so it's like our tribute to the genre of jazz. All the community, the jazz community, as well as the community that are just fans like myself. It's going to be a free event.
Where's it at?
It's going to be there. We're getting there. So location is at the build up. I'm so excited about. But location is going to be at Pocket Park, which is across from Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus. That is at 589 Ellicott Street in Buffalo, New York. It's a great. We've had one event there, and we have been saying we need to do many more events there. Awesome. It's a great space. Praying for a beautiful day, weather-wise, because it looks great when it's like that. So it's going to be again Saturday, June 28th, from 3 to 6 p.m. Cool. There we have a lot of exciting stuff. So
to seeing folks there.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing folks there. But I do also want to plug that there's going to be food trucks there. You will have free vouchers at check-in at the event. Registration is required for this event so that we have a head count. We know who's going to be there. That's where we kind of segue back into a little bit of where in the inception of this idea, Brother Sabu came to Joel's mind right away. I had the pleasure of recently experiencing this kind of intimate, unique conversation and jazz event the other month, actually, we did. And I feel like you don't always see that. And so I think that Brother Sabu is a great featured artist for us.
Well, thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Definitely. So we harped a little bit about your early experiences within jazz and your introduction to music. But with our event that we have going on, I would love to know a little bit about your early experiences with the connection between music and tobacco. Like where you're playing. Were you playing in clubs that had a lot of smoking? Was this something that people were thinking about? Were there young people smoking, old people smoking? Was it cool to smoke at the time? Is there any moments that really
Yeah, it was.
Curious. Yeah, what was the culture around?
Yeah, what was the culture like?
It was. They brought it up a little. I grew up in the '50s.
Okay.
And it was, tobacco was celebrated and kind of elevated and spotlighted in the movies.
Yeah.
Some of the, people would be, socializing, having a good time. A lot of scenes, sitting around, sipping cocktails, smoking. Even on television, like go back to I Love Lucy and Desi Arnaz. There was a lot of smoking going on there. And even people doing interviews, they have ashtrays. And ashtrays was always a part of the set. It was very common. And so myself, like my mom wanted me to play music, but she didn't necessarily want me to be a jazz musician, because she had more like classical and playing concerts and whatnot, because she didn't like a lot of times I'd be playing in venues and she'd want to hear me, but she said, I can't, all this was too much smoke, It's too smoky,
Yeah.
And so for myself, I had reservations, because a lot of my heroes, like John Coltrane, I worked with Dexter and Lee Morgan and a lot of people. They were all smokers. Between the three great things that the life expectancy of a jazz musician. Somebody told me when I was in high school was about 33 or 34 years.
Wow.
I don't know if they got that because Charlie Parker died when he was 34.
Yeah.
But between the tobacco and the alcohol and narcotics, this impacted quite a few musicians and quite a few artists, and that even though I wanted to play music, that was something that's people just assume. Actually, I've been in venues where you go into the space they have near the dressing room,
Like the green room?
chill out room, and they just have the stuff. I mean, cocaine and and whatever just spread out there. Yeah, you guys, go ahead and chill out.
Yeah, yeah.
And so one of the things that really, I'm Muslim, right? And one of the things that I noticed about like John Coltrane, had his quartet, he was a former user, and his bass player Jimmy Garrison was a user, and Elvin Jones was a notorious user, right? But McCoy Tyner was clean, And I found out, well, that's because, they say, well, he's a Muslim, Muslims don't do that. I said, oh, okay. And then I there were other people like Ahmad Jamal, which when I had an aunt who, I think my 14th birthday, I got a record player, because my parents got tired of me always hogging up the one in
So they got you your own.
had my ear up in there, so they got me my own little,
Wow.
Like a house phone.
Yeah, right.
They got their own phone.
Yeah, so my aunt, my father's sister, found out about it, and so she brought me an album. She said, "Oh, okay, good. Here, you got to listen to this guy because he's the future. He's really important." Ahmad Jamal, Alive at the Persian.
Oh my goodness.
I was about 15, so
Yeah.
when I told Mr. Jamal, I used to tell him that story, he didn't believe it. He said, man, you just dating me.
Yeah.
But he again was a Muslim, and he was known for being clean. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke.
That's fascinating. So I'm curious about where you notice the differences between those that used and smoked and did that stuff and those who didn't, because a lot of the time the narrative that's sold about artists is that you gotta do all the drugs, you gotta go make yourself crazy, and then it'll make you more creative, it'll make you more, you know what I mean, express yourself more. Is that something that you necessarily noticed to be true within your experience?
Well, yeah, I started focusing on okay, I got McCoy Tyner, and then at that time Jamal was riding high on his success, from Poinciana and other things he did, and he had enough money to open up a club in Chicago called Alhambra, and it was halal. I mean, at that time, this is in the early '60s. Nobody knew. Halal
know
was
about
that.
It was halal, yeah, for sure.
No alcohol,
Wow.
meats, religiously
Good for
slaughtered
him.
and whatnot. Very clean place. Of course, they say that's what it only lasted a couple of years because people, they want to drink and they want to smoke, But in this club that he started, there was no alcohol, no smoking, no ashtrays and whatnot. So as a teenager, I said, so I'm saying, yeah, okay, yeah, you can climb to the highest level of the music and not necessarily, be a drug addict or be a smoker, even though I was a smoker. In the military, I smoked cool cigarettes.
Wow.
Now, thank you for that.
Bringing it all
Yeah.
around.
Segue here to my next question. So, the cool cigarette brand, was famously used, the imagery of jazz and musicians, marketing their products. What do you remember, about the cool cigarette brand? And you said that when you were in the military, that was your brand of choice. So, what do you remember about that brand that maybe was enticing to you or got you to pick up your first cigarette?
Well, we knew the smoking, they used to smoke, and then a lot of people from the South used to chew tobacco.
Oh, okay.
And they would have brown teeth, and but what they were smoking, the old guys, they were smoking Chesterfields
Okay.
and Pall Mall
Yeah, Palmer.
with no filter,
Wow.
and Yeah, I mean it's in
Big boy stuff.
Terrible. You know, so when they came out with the filter, so we thought, well, filter that filters out a lot of the impurities. We thought, you know.
Yeah.
But for me, I went in the military out of high school at 17,
Okay.
and I thought that by drinking coffee black and smoking that make me a real grown up, you know.
Right.
And then the other thing is that cigarettes in those days were very cheap. I mean, cigarettes were 17 cents a pack.
Wow.
I mean,
Very accessible.
yeah,
17 cents?
yeah, 17 cent a pack. So a carton would be like $1.70.
Wow.
You know?
Man, you can't get nothing for 17 cents now.
You can't even get a Lucy for it.
Yeah, really. Even them little bubble gum joints, them joints probably about
nothing.
still $1.
But see, I was never a heavy smoker.
Okay.
I mean, a pack of cigarettes would last me for a week and a half, 2 weeks maybe. But you know, I got, and then one day when I got out the military, started playing. A friend of mine had been a former smoker, you know, and he showed me a picture in a magazine of an X-ray of two lungs. One was a smoker's lung, and the other one was a healthy lung, right? And that was it, you know. The smoker's lung was black, you know, and the healthy lung was like red, and you could see the corpuscles and stuff, you know. So I said, "What? That's what's going on with that." So
That's so interesting, like, because even we did focus groups recently with some children from various schools and neighborhoods, and we're asking them about what's a good way to get people off of smoking, like what's effective. A lot of them were like, "Oh, you can't. There's nothing you can do. Once you smoke, you're hooked. You're done." You know what I mean?
that's not true.
But there are other people that said, like, the commercials about people with their teeth getting pulled out and people that are like on a respirator and all types of stuff, you know.
Hole in their neck and stuff.
That's just, and that's the stuff that sticks with people. So it's kind of interesting to see, even from the kids that we interviewed versus a former smoker. Like, you get to see that, like, the turning point is that education of what's actually going on, you know, with the smoking. Right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
So I always, you know, I was health conscious, you know, because I was an athlete, you know.
What sports did you play?
I played basketball.
Okay.
I played for the Air Force for 3 years. You know.
Wow.
Power forward. You know.
Okay. You said power.
Guy.
I toured.
Yeah.
Multifaceted.
Yes, sir.
Brother
I
Sabu.
toured all Europe.
Wow.
That's another thing. When I was touring with the basketball team, we go to bigger towns like Berlin and Frankfurt and Munich, and I would always, whenever I hit a town, I would always seek out, you know, jazz clubs, musicians and whatnot, you know. And
how did you see, like, what was the difference, like, the jazz out there versus the jazz when you come back to the States? How was the culture? Was the culture the same?
it was very welcoming. It was very, you know.
They usually say that.
It surprised me, actually, when I got to Germany, and which is where I started playing bass, by the way. I had never touched the bass until I went to Germany.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So I started taking lessons, you know. I found a teacher who had been a former Nazi.
Oof.
He wasn't, well, let me put it like, he was in Hitler's army.
Oh, my God.
And but he wasn't with it. But he said they drafted him, and if he refused, they would have killed him.
Wow.
And but interesting story with him. He was very good. He was a principal soloist with the Würzburg Symphony.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And he had been taken captive by the Americans, right? And he played bass and he played piano, and the musicians and the officers' club, they used to have entertainment on the weekend, and the musicians they found out that he played piano, and they needed a piano player, so they used to come get him out of his cell, spruce him up, put him in the band.
Wow.
And so he got friendly with them, and so they looked out for him, you know. They take him food and whatnot, you know. And so he told me the story, you know, because when I first went to his house, you know, he was so happy, he was so overjoyed, man. He was smiling, gave me a big hug, man. So I wondered, is this guy gay or what, you know? But then his wife and his little boy over there said, no, it's not that. Then he told me this story about he had been captive and the black GIs had saved his life.
Wow.
And he always felt like he had a debt to repay. He didn't know how he was going to pay it until I showed up on his doorstep.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah, it's deep.
It
and
is.
And he used to tell me, you're getting pretty good at this. He goes, you know what? When you get out of the military, they call military militar, You're gonna come back. You're gonna be coming back to Europe playing as a professional. I said, no way, man. I'm just trying to get through this tour, man. I'm not doing all that. So it happened, you know. I called him. When the first time I went back, I called him from Paris. I said, you know what? I'm back. I'm in Paris. I'm playing here. I told you.
Oh my goodness.
Then I was in London. I called him, you know, and then I was that thing we did with Gary Burton in France, you know. I would call him every time. He says, I told you you should listen to me. But he just passed recently. He was about 88 years old. Yeah, but it's you know, God has a way of guiding us through the journey that He wants us to be on. You know, so
That's right.
so my attraction to I've seen people like Yusuf Lateef, you know, Ahmad, Jamal. There's another piano player, Sadiq Hakim, Jackie McLean, other people that I knew. You know, they were, and some of them, even Idris Muhammad. Everybody knows Idris Muhammad, right?
Yeah.
Who used to be a user, a smoker, and I just read an interview recently with him, and he was talking about how the faith impacted him and cleaned him up, and how he ever since, because his name used to be Leo or something, I forget what it was, and he embraced the faith and he cleaned up, and he had nothing but success. And you know, he's on some of everybody's record. You know,
Yeah.
Grover Washington. He's got about 5 or 6 of his own. He was on CTI, like the house drummer. And I had the privilege of recording with him with the Kamal Abdul Alim album called Dance.
Wow.
With Idris Muhammad, myself, Bobby Watson was on it, and James Spalding was on it. Ron Burton was on it.
Man,
Wow.
that's killing right there.
Conga player named Abdul Sabur. We had a great time, you know. It was
Wait, what
considered
was
to be-
this?
Huh?
What year was this?
This was 83, 84. You can look it up. It's called Dance.
Dance.
It's considered to be one of the first world music records.
Oh,
Because you know, Kamal wrote all the music on there, and it kind of, you know, went across. But it was all Muslim group again. You know, I keep coming, and it was so, you know.
Yeah.
And so we were having trouble in the studio because we only had one rehearsal, and we had, and all this music was original, right? And so we were having, you know, the chemistry wasn't just working just right, you know. And prayer time came time for prayer about 1 o'clock. It was in New York City, you know. And so somebody, I think it was Idris, said, well, I don't know about y'all, but I got to pray, man, you know. So we said, well, we all got to pray. Let's pray. So we prayed and put the mics back, put the rug down, you know. And then we went back, and then from that point, every tune was the first take. It just went
Wow.
through the whole thing, you know.
Oh my.
And there was you know, world music. We were talking about world music back in the 80s, you know. And that's, if you go online and look up Dance album by Kamal Abdul Alim, they put it in the world music category, you know.
Wow.
But
You all aligned with God there.
yeah.
That's what it
He
was.
straightened it out.
He straightened it out.
It was, you know. So
Energy's got to be right.
yeah,
You
you
know,
got
it's all-
well,
yeah, you gotta be
because
aligned.
see, it's a spiritual connection, and one of the problems, even some of the people that were really, you know, sick, like Charlie Parker is probably our best. He's our great leader, you know, as far as what they call bebop and whatnot, you know. And if you read his biographies, you know, he was very spiritual. Bird was the type of person that they say he could discuss almost any subject, you know, astrophysics. If almost any subject came up, he had something to say about it. You know, where do you get all this knowledge from? He reads a lot, you know. But he was very, very spiritual. When they did that record Bird with Strings, and he was late, and he came in and the orchestra was warming up. He came in and he listened, you know. He turned around, and he ran down the street. And they had to run and catch him, you know. I said, "Where'd you go, Ray? You running away?" He said, "Oh, it's just too beautiful, man." He said, "It's too beautiful."
Whoa.
And if you listen to that record, Bird with Strings,
Yep.
I mean, and he's
It's the first of its
rehearsals.
kind too, melding those.
Yeah, he's weaving it out between the strings, like
Yeah. Unreal.
so the spiritual aspect, you know, is very important, you know. But I like to put the whole concept of our music, what I like to call African American classical music, I like to put it in the wider framework of what was happening to us as a people, and why so many of us, you know, gravitated toward entertainment or sports, because it was either like they asked Art Blakey, you know, that you know, why do you want to be a musician? He said, I got tired of working in the steel plant. The other
Which
person
would you
said,
prefer? Yeah.
Yeah, right. And like the blues, like John Lee Hooker and the blues guys, they said, man, I didn't want to pick cotton no more.
Right.
You know, so it was like either that or this. You know?
It's an escape.
And so.
But that also like shows that like the mentality of how serious, these guys took the music. I mean, because I think nowadays people got it all wrong. They think that music is just some way to avoid work. It's not. Music in itself it's work. It's your 9 to 5. You gotta put the time in.
Yeah,
And even all the greats that we talk about now. I mean, I'm sure the guys you work with, you can see their work ethic. You can see, and it's not even just work ethic as you as a person, but like you're talking about the spiritual connection. You got to hit it from all fronts.
Yeah.
You gotta work on your connection to the source.
Yeah.
Work on yourself as a person, and work on your musicianship as a whole. And I don't know if you have anything about like just the work ethic of some of the great people you played with.
Oh yeah, they well, if you see like Coltrane, if any picture you see, you never gonna catch him. And Dolphy's like that too. They always have the neck. If they don't have the horn in their hand, they got the. You see the strap.
Got the strap.
You know, if they're not practiced, they're getting ready to practice. You know, I worked with Jamal for 5 years, and this guy used to practice, man. You know, and he had a requirement that wherever we were booked, he needed a keyboard in the room. You know, and he's just. I mean, he used to practice a lot, you know, and sometimes he'd practice more intently. And when he was practicing intently, I said, "Oh, tonight's gonna be on," you know. It was, and it really was, you know. But I think the more profound musicians, they understand that what we have is a gift that's been given to us, you know. And like when any gift that you give, you know, you really have to show appreciation and gratitude to the giver of the gift. And at the same time, our bodies and the health that we have, this is a gift, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
we have no right to squander it or spoil it or abuse it. And unfortunately, too many of us, you know, we're abusers. We abuse ourselves. But it was a part of the culture. And like I say, the wider thing of what was happening to us as a people, when people are oppressed and enslaved, you know, for so many years, centuries, you know, 2-3 years, almost 400 years of oppression and demoralization and slavery and Jim Crow and all that stuff, you know, if you wanted to escape, you know, you wanted, like U.B. Blake, you know, U.B. Blake, the famous, you know, band leader and pianist from back in the early part of the 20th century. He said one time, he said, when I'm on stage playing, you know, I feel like that's the real world. And then when I come off stage, I feel like I'm going into the false or the fake.
Wow.
You know,
Interesting take.
and a lot of musicians have said that, you know, and I kind of feel a little bit that way too. When you're playing, you're in your element. You know, like when we have, you know, even with our little group, you know, when things are going like they're supposed to go, it's like almost like heaven, you know. It's like,
True.
and the people can feel it too, you know. But then you come down and you go and then people are, all, you know, then the devil comes back, you know. So the whole thing is, as I think, maintain that level of, I will even call it a high. I would call it like almost like a mild form of intoxication when you're playing or performing or singing or whatnot, and it's the way it's supposed to be. You kind of are elevated, you know. And so, unfortunately, to maintain that, but then the guy's doing all that. He comes down and now he's just, you know, like the old guy, Dinah Washington, and do great people like that. You know, they make all this great music, but then they come down. They couldn't even sit down and have a drink, you know, with the audience because it was white. They had to go outside or go in the kitchen, and so to try to mediate in between the two extremes of the beauty of playing this great music and the horror of just being, you know, a Negro or a slave or a colored person, whatnot. That's where the drugs come in. That's where the artificial, you know, something chemical to make me feel better than what
Right.
my situation actually is.
Man, that's deep.
And I really think that has a lot to do with, because it always, like I said, it started with Buddy Bolden, the very first one, you know, according to most jazz historians, you know. And he wound up dying in an insane asylum. And
As you're talking, and I'm thinking, when we spoke with a lot of the young people, they were talking, and these are like teenagers, and they were like, I hit the vape, people we know hit the vape or smoke, or just use anything because they're stressed. And like I've started to feel my age being 34, because I'm like, what y'all stressed about?
yeah, you OG.
Yeah, but then I'm like, oh, you being disconnected and disingenuous from when you was a teenager. I remember being stressed as a teenager. And now that I'm an adult, it's like, I'm so far removed from that, I almost discredit whatever they're going through. But like hearing what you're saying in that perspective, but also hearing like how you were able to kind of navigate through it without necessarily falling victim to like a lot of the drugs and the alcohol and the substance abuse, even though you said you smoked. So like, what would you say were some of the things that kind of kept you away from indulging in that? How did you navigate through that? And also, when you decided to smoke cigarettes, how did you find your way to quit?
Well, let me just say, let me self-disclose. I wasn't totally clean, you know.
Okay.
I dibble and dabble with a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but I was never addicted, you know.
Gotcha.
I mean, the way my friends were, and most of my friends were. And so people used to assume that I was, because most of my friends, they were heroin addicts and cocaine addicts and whatnot. I mean, close friends, you know.
Yeah.
I was in Germany, and a friend of mine, real close friend, I had been with him, we've been friends since third grade. He was in Vietnam. I'm in Germany, right? So I go to we had mailboxes, you know, like in the post office.
Yeah.
I go to my mailbox one day and smell something coming out of the box. I open up the box. There's an envelope full of ganja weed. You know? So I said, man, no, this nigga didn't do that. He did not do this. And look through the military post office.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like, anybody looking, man? I'm waiting for him to come and arrest me, man, you know?
Right.
So they didn't, you know.
Internationally, too.
From Vietnam.
Right.
He sent it from Vietnam
My
to Germany
God.
through the military system.
Oh,
you know?
no.
And so I write a letter. Man, don't do that, man. You gonna get us locked up, man. So he thought it was really hilarious. You know?
Oh,
He
no.
said, okay, man. I just
Oh,
want to see if it will work. You know, I'll go back there 2-3 days. He did it again. You know?
Oh, my God.
So these are the kind of friends I had. You know?
Right.
That's
Picture. Picture. Yeah.
But again, I just I come from a very religious family. You know, my mom and grandparents and whatnot. A lot of preachers, a lot of reverends and whatnot. And my grandmother taught me the verse. I think it's from the Psalms. Says goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life and whatnot. She said, you know, that's that's gonna happen to you. You're gonna be okay. You know, and she's the first one actually that took me to the mosque too. That's another story that fascinates me. She was an evangelist. She was a Christian preacher. She had a church over here on East Ferry near Jefferson.
Wow.
But she said, I think you belong over here.
Wow.
Yeah, you come on, you going with me? Oh no, I'm not going over there. There's just foreign people over there. You know, she said, no. This is way beyond that. Come on, boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
She
fascinating.
was the Reverend S.E. Bell Jackson. You know.
It was on her spirit.
Yeah.
It was on her spirit that you belonged there. Yeah.
Actually, yeah. And so, I had a lot of nurturing and a lot of things around me that protected me. You know, even though, like I say, I dibbled and dabbled with this and that, but. Smoking became kind of a habit, but was never a deep habit because I could, like I said, a pack of cigarettes might last me 2 weeks. You know, and then also I saw the devastation of what it was doing to the people. I mean, I really loved the music and I loved the artists, and I noticed that most of them were. When I got a chance to get close to a lot of them, you know, they were not happy people, you know, and they were, you know. Like one of my favorite jobs with Abby Lincoln, the famous, you know, songstress and actress, and she made a movie with Sidney Poitier. And she was just her and her husband Max. Wow. Some of my favorite people. You know, we used to call them the king and queen of the black liberation movement, because they were the first one to go on stage dressed like this.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And she was one of the first people to wear natural hair in
Wow.
movies, you know.
Yeah.
For the Love of Ivy is one of her famous movies, you know. But I toured with her for about 2 years, you know. And she wound up dying of dementia.
Oh.
And they never had any children, and the marriage with Max only lasted a few years, maybe 5, 6 years. And after it, she went into sincere depression. And she was smoking, and she was doing cocktails and whatnot. And we used to sit and have long conversations, you know. And when she got sick, we toured Italy together, you know, for about 2 weeks, you know. And but it was kind of sad. At the end, she was very alone and lonely, and you know. She's an example of like her, like a lot of Billie Holiday, Bessie Smith, and a lot of women in music who they weren't happy. Men that were, you know, unhappy, and that's where the alcohol, the tobacco, and things come in to make you understanding that there are some benefits to substances, you know, but you know there are short-term benefits. You know, with every high, every intoxication is always a crash.
Yeah, was it?
There's a hangover.
Was it like they were unhappy before the substances, or do you think the substances was actually like medicine to help?
I think there was. I think it was self-medication.
Self-medication.
Yeah.
Right?
In Abby's case, I know it was self-medication. Charlie Parker, for instance, he became a drug addict as a teenager. He had a terrible automobile accident, and they started giving him morphine and whatnot. And so from that point on, he just, you know, and, yeah. So
and then lived a short life.
Yeah, short, very, very short. You know, but the good news is that the younger musicians, like I think starting from the '90s, and the Wynton Marsalis era, you know, these young musicians, I noticed they were very aware. You know, that not that they weren't all.
Right.
They still had some addicts. Like one of them died with a needle of his arm. Was a piano player. The played with Wynton. You know, I can't think of his name right now.
I don't know.
I was gonna ask you too, though. Like, how do you think the culture has shifted and changed, if it has, like around drugs, alcohol, or specifically like smoking, tobacco products? Being as you're somebody who's been able to kind of see things change over time and be a part of it, how would you say like the culture around specifically smoking tobacco has changed?
I think one of the things that helped a lot is that the younger musicians, the younger artists, not just musicians, poets, you know, writers, are more educated, they're more college educated, more, you know. Most of the older guys, they were pretty much self-taught. I mean, look at Duke Ellington's great band, man. Almost all those guys was self-taught. Dizzy Gillespie likes to say he never had a trumpet lesson in his life. He broke all the rules. That's where
That's why
that's the first thing they tell you when you start playing trumpet is don't do that.
Yeah. All the evidence is right there.
It's right there. So that's one factor: education, and then social awareness too. You know, because you know, in the wake of, and then seeing, and then being around, like myself, being around older musicians, like you know, like Dexter Gordon, like Mal Waldron, like, you know, Abby, and so many others, you know, and seeing that most of them, number one, most of them didn't have much of a family life, you know, and I always wanted a family, you know. It's one of the reasons I didn't stay on the road, you know. Like I retired from the road probably after, I was out there about 20 years, 19, 20 years, and but you know, I had 7 kids, you know, and my wife, you know, when they were younger, it was all right, but the boys started getting older. She said, "Look, you know, these dudes wilding out. You need to come talk to your son." And it's a kind of a lonely life traveling. You know, I mean, what they say, all the glitters is not gold. I mean, and it looks to people, oh man, you know, you're going from city to city, you're playing these great venues, you live in a hotel and whatnot, you know, and it's fun for a while, you know, but after a while, you know, and I notice the people who do that for a long their whole life and whatnot, that they don't have much of a life other than that. You know? And it's not just the money, you know, or the fame, you know. That at the end of the day, you just want, you know. Like I admired my father. He worked in the steel plant, man. And he was happy, you know. He just went to work every day, you know, and went to church on Sunday and bought groceries on Saturday and whatnot, and that was it, man. You know. And as a youngster, I used to think,
Simple life.
Yeah, I used to think, oh man, this guy's a square, man. You know. I wanted him to be like the hustlers in the street or like whatnot.
Interesting.
You know, but you know, I said, you know what, that's the life. You know, just
You had it made.
keep it simple, you know, simple and easy.
That's great advice.
So I think just keep it simple. The real thing is the difference in between this generation and the ones before it is education, is social consciousness, and also more aware. You find now people talking about different forms of religious or spirituality, or whether it's Islam or Buddhism or Christianity or whatever it is. More of an understanding that this thing, like Art Blakey said one time, he said, this music is a gift. It comes from the creator to the artist and then to the audience, split second timing, you know. And that's what Art Blakey used to teach, you know. And he was a Muslim too, even though he was pretty, he never cured his addiction, I don't think, you know. But he trained almost everybody that played with him went on, you know, Wayne Shorter, Lee Morgan, you know, Watson, Bobby Timmons, and whatnot. They went on to have, you know, nice careers, you know. And but another thing I wanted to say is about music was a survival tool for a lot of, like, you know, Wayne Shorter, he made all those records on Blue Note. They're great records, all of them, right? You know,
Right.
We play some of the music from them, like
Juju.
yeah, Juju and Black Narcissus and all those. He made a string of it. He got this contract with Blue Note, and he made about 7 or 8 albums back to back, and all of them are great, you know. And they asked him, saying, "Man, how could you kick out albums like that? You know, one after the other." He says, "Man, we were hungry. You know, we were trying to eat,
Trying to keep the lights on. We had
The
to.
lights on.
That's right.
Yeah, and so we just had to dig deep, you know, into ourselves. You know?
Goes into that work ethic again.
Again.
Yeah.
And so you find the people who, like, when Wayne passed, he was 89. Lou Donaldson just passed, he was 97. Roy Haynes was also recently, he was 98. And most of these guys were known for being pretty clean. I mean, Wayne had a bad problem way back, but he got over it early, you know. But the ones who hung around for a while, Jamal was 93.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love to hear
So
those
it's really
stories.
clear. It's really clear, like those who stay clean. You get to
Yes,
see
they
the track
clean
record.
and diet too.
Longevity.
Yeah,
Diet.
yeah. It has to do with a lot of stuff.
But I imagine it's difficult to eat well when you're on the road traveling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. When I was with Jamal, Peyton Crosby was the drummer. You mentioned him in the bio, you know, and he was a vegetarian. So wherever we went, whether it was San Francisco, Boston, or New York, or Florida, he knew where all the vegetarian restaurants were. You know,
Had it mapped out.
Right. And even though I was never 100% vegetarian, but I never ate a lot of meat, you know. So I would hang out with him. We went to San Francisco. He was friends with Santana, and Santana at that time had a great restaurant. It was vegetarian. I don't know if he still got it. And you go in there, I mean, it's like a smorgasbord, you know. Great food, delicious, you know, but all plant-based, you know.
Yeah.
No way.
So the younger musicians, I think, are more into that.
It seems like they're
Yeah.
tapping into those health conscious kind of you know, they
Yeah.
kind of stay away from because they see the stories of the greats, and I don't think they believe the hype that was sold to jazz musicians that you need to do all this self-destructive behavior in order to reach your full potential, which is kind of counterintuitive, you know.
But then we have to talk a little bit about the whole tobacco industry too, and they, in fact, I think one of the companies, I heard about it recently, probably within the last year or two, got sued.
Get into it, brother Sabu. Get into
They
it.
got sued for millions of dollars.
That's
for
right.
mis-
Juul, the vape. I think you're referring to the vape company.
The vape
for misleading people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Misleading
And
people.
not not having full disclosure
Absolutely.
about the health benefits.
Absolutely.
And I think one of those lawsuits led to the little thing on the side of the package saying, warning people
Warning.
that this
Yeah.
you can smoke this stuff if you want it, but
If you want it.
but it might kill you.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
Right, right.
So many words. That's what
Right.
it was saying.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly what it was.
At its
And
core.
additionally, in that lawsuit, it was proven in court that they were marketing to youth. That they were. That was. Imagine the morals of just those companies sitting around in their strategic planning room and how are we going to hook on a new generation of smokers, and
Well,
how do we get the youth?
Well, it's
Yeah, it's great.
corporate America is ruthless. You know, it's ruthless. Anything
That's right.
for money. You know,
That's right.
You know, they'll. We got to watch them. That's one of the greatest things that we try to teach our children is don't go for the hype. You know, like my grandfather used to say, whenever you see a crowd, go the other way.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's a good nugget. That's a good nugget of
That's a
advice.
good,
Yeah.
It's true though.
Yeah, I saw that firsthand. A good friend of mine, it was a skerfuffle going on, let's just say. And everybody ran down there.
To the scuffle.
Yeah, and him being a big black man. When the police got there, it were women involved in the skerfuffle. But when the police got there, they seen the big black man standing above the crowd, tackled and arrested him. He like, what I do? So during the next kerfuffle in the neighborhood, when everybody ran down there to see what was going on, he was like, nah.
Yeah.
You learn.
You gotta learn.
And I learned from watching him. Like, I'm also avoid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never know. Yeah. So, I'm also curious too. Just thinking, cause you talk a lot about like the younger musicians that are coming up, and I think whether we recognize it or not, there's competing interest for the hearts and minds of attention of young people.
Absolutely.
And I see a lot of young people, at least that I work with in my vicinity, gravitating towards a lot of like, I don't want to just say rap music and hip hop music, but like a lot of music that involves like drugs, violence, over sexualization of like themselves and other people in the community. So like, and that has like $1 billion machine placed behind it, just like the tobacco industry has placed behind it. So I'm curious, like, where are the access points for young people who may be the next great jazz musician, but doesn't get the opportunity, doesn't get the exposure, doesn't get that chance to pick up an instrument or even hear some jazz music. So what are the access points for young people to get into kind of like jazz and, as you said, African American classical music as an alternative to some of the other areas of music that are out there?
Well, it's tough now because our community is disproportionately it is wealth compromised, man. We don't have what they call systematic wealth or generational wealth, and then when you look at what's going on with artists, and you see Jay-Z and Diddy and these people who are billionaires, you know what I mean, and you see us and most of us, we're okay, but we ain't billionaires. Man. Even Miles Davis wasn't a billionaire. John Coltrane wasn't a billionaire. And so that figures into it. And the other thing is that whereas before we used to have to try to get recording contracts or go into somebody's studio, and now kids, you go in the basement, man, with a laptop, man, like you.
Exactly.
Trap.
And get
Basement records.
and get it going on, man. You got an idea, you develop it,
Yeah.
But I think again, it's another case of how corporate America has exploited and corrupted the minds of our youth through the vile lyrics and the negative camaraderie and the glorification of jail life and prison life and whatnot. I used to work in a jail. When I came off the road, I worked for the state as a prison chaplain.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
17 years.
Wow.
And
17 years.
Yeah.
As a chaplain.
As a chaplain, yeah, I was a chaplain.
Mm.
And but I always, whenever they would have a music program, I would always involve myself. Like before, I was a youth counselor at Maston Park, before going into corrections, and one of the first things we did was set up a music workshop. And Al Tenney, myself, Bilal, Abdul Rahman, we were all working there, as it was for, Maston Park was for kids, 13 to 18. So I was a counselor. Most of them, they were like YDAs, which is really like a prison guard. But we would channel the kids into.
You talking about like the old East Ferry?
No, Best Street.
Okay.
Best Street over there. Was it Best in Time and huge place.
Oh, that big white
Yeah.
building with the barbed wire.
Yeah, they took the barbed wire down.
Yeah, I went to MLK 39, which was like
Okay, right around the corner.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
seen that.
so they took the barbed wire down because somebody else bought it, and then you had to take it down. But we always had a music program in there, And some of those kids, had one in Syracuse now. Al Tenney taught him how to play the piano, and he's been the church pianist in Syracuse now for many years, and he calls me up, man, and tells he's very grateful. Others went on, so the exposure is there. But when, like I say, and this hip hop culture, man, it's everywhere, man. And you can't, everything is all, you go watch an NBA game, man, the commercials, everything, whatever.
That's right.
It's, I think some of them have a healthier mix, like Roots.
Yeah.
I like Roots. They have a message. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have a positive message. But other ones are just playing on selling the wrong message to kids.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't like. So people think you don't like hip hop. I don't have no problem with hip hop because to me, hip hop is just like bebop. It came. It was like an iconoclast. It was like it broke the mold of what came before. But when it's used for negativity, when it's used for abusing women, and defaming, people and that kind of thing, and the violence, man, like murders and whatnot, and people that Tupac and Biggie and have to die because of that nonsense, and the other ones and Diddy getting ready to go to jail for life. Because so he's a billionaire, but I mean, this man got 3 matches. He can't stand none of them. So,
That's so profound, man.
yeah, it's deep.
And I wonder what that because to me it seems like the rap music that's promoting the guns and violence and all that stuff. It doesn't really seem like our message, really. It don't feel like we own it. Like it's not.
Right, it's not.
And I feel like jazz and like the earlier forms of black music, that was us. That was our thing. You know what I mean? But I think this. You talk about early hip hop. Yeah, you got no problem with early hip hop because it is an extension of bebop. But then there was at some point there was a shift. And we don't control the music that's being made now with the rap music and stuff. That stuff's being backed by some serious money. That's not coming from our communities. We're not doing that. We're giving it, but giving it to them, but we're not investing in it.
I think just as like a semi-hip hop historian myself, I'm not as familiar with like jazz, but I definitely seen Kim Burns' documentary twice. I watched the whole, I think it was like 20 hours.
That's a good one.
Watched it
It's
twice.
on my list. I got it.
It was very, because Kim Burns is like my favorite documentarian.
It's like 10 volumes of.
Yeah, it's like 10 2-hour episodes.
That's on PBS, right?
Yeah, PBS.
I've been intending to watch that for a while.
Well worth watching. I watched it twice.
Okay.
But I also like study a lot of hip hop, and like two of my favorite groups of all time. One of them is A Tribe Called Quest, and so like they explicitly call what they do jazz rap. Like that's what they call it, because like they're sampling old jazz records and then putting like different like hip hop rap bass lines and stuff and kick drums to it, so that way Q-Tip and Phife Dawg can sort of rap over it. Aside from that though, I also am a huge fan of Dr. Dre and NWA. And Dre was doing some of the same sampling, but with more like funk music, because that was big out in the West Coast. So like a lot of funk music, less than jazz, which is also happening simultaneously. Both these groups are both making records at the same time. I just think what happened with NWA was when Eazy-E got with I forget the Jewish guy who was behind gave him the money, but like now it became like, how can we exploit this gangster rap thing to make money? Whereas what folks like Q-Tip and the Tribe Called Quest and the Native Tongues, the Jungle Brothers, De La Soul, those more like jazz rap kind of groups were kind of like what Joe was saying, like
It's a continuation
of that culture that's really
tradition,
more so in it for the love, not necessarily the commercialization.
Right.
They trying to be good.
Right.
Ain't nobody trying to be poor,
Right.
but like they also ain't trying to do whatever it takes to become the billionaire.
Yeah.
Is I forgot who said the quote, but like you don't become a billionaire by being a good person.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I remember and the point that you were just drawing from what Joel said too. I've never thought about how far many things in life entices us to get it, that brings us away from our true self and our true. And it kind of ties to the things that you've talked about. Been on the road 20 years and just coming back to yourself, coming back to your roots, coming back to what grounds us and almost I kind of always go on this as a reflection of my life, just like what really matters at the end of the day, at the end of your life, and it's that family, that love that you cultivated clearly, and has shown throughout your career, and shines through right now. But it's interesting that journey, and if artists, I don't know, are able to come back to themselves at some point, and
we have to talk about, I think, John Coltrane and all of this, because he was a person who ran the gamut. You know what I mean? He had two grandfathers who were preachers. I think one was Methodist and one was Baptist. He was born in the South and grew up in Philadelphia. And he got caught up, and addiction. And he overcame it. He was so, I mean, his addiction was so bad that when he was working with Miles, he was showing up late, unclean, and falling asleep in between, solos and stuff like that. So finally Miles fired him,
Yep.
And he slapped him and told him to get out,
Yeah.
And Monk was there, and Monk said, man, man, that's terrible. You don't have to take that. You come play with me, And when he was playing with Monk, then he says he had a spiritual reawakening, he went on a spiritual journey. And with the help of his wife, Naima, at the time, he overcame it. And later on, that was like 57, 58. He only had another not even 10 years to live,
Right.
But toward the end, they asked him, what was it that was driving him to, because he went through different phases in the music or whatnot. He had a simple answer. He said, I just want to be a good person. He said, there's two forces in the world. He said, I know there's good in the world and there's evil in the world. I just want to be a force for good in the world, And I think that sums up a lot of the whole spiritual appetite or the need to, to make great music, music from the heart, music. Love Supreme now is 50 years, 60 years old, and it's become like an anthem. The album Love Supreme, and they have a church out there. These white folks, the Church of John Coltrane. You ever heard of it?
No.
They have a church, man. They've made him a saint.
What?
Really?
It's called the Church of John
Oh
Coltrane.
my gosh.
Where's that located?
I think it's in San Francisco.
Okay.
Or Los
that
Angeles.
now.
Yeah. Look up search out some.
Yeah,
the Church of John Coltrane.
Okay.
John Coltrane.
And their whole thing, theology, their religious dogma and theology is based around what he wrote. On the inside of that, he starts out saying, all praises due to God, and so forth and so on. It's a long thing that he wrote.
Yeah,
And that's there.
San Francisco.
San Francisco, right?
San Francisco.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't know about it. I was playing in San Francisco, and at the airport,
Gosh.
they were handing out this is back in the 80s.
Oh, they
Some people from the church were, like the Hare Krishnas do, handing out their pamphlets.
Yeah.
They were handing out something. The Church of John Coltrane. I said, what is this? So I did some
St.
research.
John Coltrane Church.
Yeah, what's it called?
St. John Coltrane Church.
St. John Coltrane.
That's interesting.
That's the St. John that we acknowledge.
Yeah, right.
St. John Coltrane
Yeah.
African Orthodox Church Global Spiritual Community. Dang.
Yeah.
Wow.
Got one of them saint
Wow.
paintings too.
Official.
Wow.
They got him anointed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with the
he's an anointed
saxophone
brother.
in hand.
But
But his
that's the
stuff
im-
was
that's the impact.
profoundly spiritual
That's
though.
the impact. That's the impact. So
That's amazing.
we want to have an impact on our youth, on our community. We want to, like Jackie McLean used to say, we don't want to do entertainment. We want to do inner attainment. We want our audience to attain something
I love that.
for their inner selves.
Mm-hmm.
Not just to enjoy yourself and pat your foot and then go home and forget about it. No, we want change. We want real change, and at the end of the day, the musicians, especially the bebop musicians, they were some of the first revolutionaries, in terms of black social protests. When they were making a statement. They were rejecting, the dominant culture of the day, which says that in order to be a real artist, you have to be white, you have to play European classical music, you have to be fit somebody else's standards. They say no, we create our own standards.
Mm-hmm.
They took songs written by European composers like George Gershwin, Irving Berlin, and whatnot, and turned them into something completely, turn them on their head, especially through improvisation. I played them at tempos, man, that the composers never would imagine that. Can you even play that fast? Can music be played like that? And then improvise on it.
Yeah.
So these people, Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, Lester Young is a very interesting story, because Lester was from a musical family, and when he was growing up, they had a family band, and he played various instruments and whatnot, But Lester became very good and got famous playing with Count Basie. But he got drafted in World War II, and he had a lot of problems in there, because he was like, he was a musician. He was kind of like a spoiled kid, and he refused to wear combat boots. He wanted to wear, slick shoes and whatnot.
Yeah.
Man, I'm not wearing that SH.
Yeah.
You gonna put that on my feet? Nah, I don't think so. And
That's crazy.
so he wound up getting court-martialed and
Wow.
For some boots?
yeah, about he just wasn't with it, man.
He wasn't with it,
He
yeah.
didn't want to be there. He wanted to be playing it on.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pictures of him with smoke swirling around his head and stuff, smoking a cigarette and whatnot. And so after he came out of the military, he was still great, but he wasn't. Bud Powell, something similar happened to Bud Powell, but he wasn't in the military. They had serious encounters with the system because they wanted to be themselves, and the system wanted them to be something else that they were not. And so many stories like that. They were resisting, it was a resistance movement, man, because they just knew that they had something special. They had something that nobody else had. You might not have been able to verbalize it, but what they were doing was something unique, something that never happened. They were creating America's only original art form.
Yeah.
With the exception maybe of a Native American visual art. And
It's the same thing that goes on today, though. I mean, like that hasn't stopped. Many, even our focus groups, you just encounter so many special kids that just have the life and the energy just drained out of them.
Yeah.
And we're going back to the reasons why they're vaping and saying they were stressed. These kids shouldn't be stressed, man. They should be kids. They should have the freedom to be kids and to explore and to
do kid things.
And we're asking them do kid things. We're asking them questions like, what was the last one we said? Like, imagine a world without tobacco or something. Like, what would it look like or something?
They can't even visualize.
And
And that's in a sense, I spoke about this in really trying to debrief with Stan Martin about how the focus groups went, who wasn't able to be there. But just a sense of hopelessness that we would love to restore in our youth and in the generations. Well, and it's a hopelessness that they self-identified societally in the world. It's beyond just they can't even like think about about just the topic of tobacco almost. It felt like they almost don't have the capacity. They're just trying to get by. They're trying to survive, and they're so young already. So, and in that vein that Joel brings up, we've clearly established that you have been a part of music for decades.
Yes.
And in the spirit of taking down tobacco, or tuning out tobacco, if you will, tuning out tobacco, if you will. If you could send a message to youth or to young up-and-coming jazz artists about tobacco use, what would you say?
Yeah, one of the most important lessons I learned from my elders growing up was to always think for yourself and don't follow the crowd, and understand your self-worth. And one of the reasons that we recommend music for young people is that not that everybody's going to become a professional musician, but you develop a certain sense of self-awareness, and you realize that like I have a daughter, for instance. She started taking cello lessons when she was, I think, in the 7th grade. In fact, it was the wife of my bass teacher. They were both principals in the Philharmonic. He was the principal of the bass section, and his wife, their name was, I should name them, Theodore Mayer was the principal bassist in the Philharmonic.
From Germany, right?
No, this one here.
This one here. Okay, I was like, how did that happen?
Yeah, when I got here, I went to UB.
I see.
And I noticed they had a bass curricula, and so I enrolled for it and found out it was the principal bassist with the Buffalo Philharmonic.
Oh, okay.
And his wife was the principal cellist, with the Philharmonic. And so I used to go over his house for my lesson, and they were really nice people. And I used to say, if I ever get a daughter, I'm going to bring her over here so you can teach her how to play cello. And so in '85, my daughter was born. And when she got to be about 5, I took her. And she was like, oh, yeah, sure, I'd love to teach you. She started taking lessons with her when she was about 5 or 6, And she got pretty good. She was in the Sweet Home All District Orchestra, But when she went to college, she kind of left the cello at home. But she's on the National Honor Roll and did all this great stuff. She's a U.S. attorney now.
Good for
And
her.
she's a lawyer in Washington.
Awesome.
But she came home. I think last year before last, she drove home. And when she's leaving, she's putting the cello in the car. I was like, what are you gonna do with that? Oh, I decided to start practicing. So
Coming back home.
right. So
Oneself.
but I think that what you learn in music is you can translate it to other disciplines. Because you learn how to study. You learn the importance of practicing and discipline. And so back to the question about tobacco is that there's when you think for yourself and you look at it's just this is statistics. I mean, if lung cancer is killing more people than the next 2 or 3 cancers, and self-preservation is the first law of nature. You want to preserve yourself. I mean, we've had enough suicide. We have enough genocide. We have enough fratricide. Why kill yourself? For 30 seconds or 2 minutes of pleasure. And so that especially, I think vaping is just as dangerous as smoking cigarettes.
100%.
If not, I mean, I don't know how much study has been done, but it looks to me like when I see all this smoke around people's head, man, it can't be good for you.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the main thing that we have to in our young people, we have to teach them to develop self-esteem, to value themselves, to realize that that what we have, our minds, our bodies, our talents. They don't really belong to us. They're gifts. We're just on loan to us.
Yeah.
And one day we're going to be judged about how well we use the gift that was given to us. And we have to protect it if we want to maintain it, if we want to go on. It can be a short term or it can be a long term. I mean, none of us know how long we're going to live, but
That's right.
if we can do certain things, we can drink our water and watch our diet, and the other thing is company, peer pressure.
Yeah.
Keep good company.
That's
keep
right.
good company. Somebody said once, if you want to know the character of a person, see what kind of friends he has.
That's right.
Right. So if you know if you want to avoid the smoking culture, then you can hang out with smokers.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
because they'll catch you up. You know?
yeah. It's the combination of the 5 closest friends you have, or something like that.
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
So it's true.
It
It's true.
says a lot.
I mean, it translates. You can insert whatever you want, but my uncle used to always tell me, "Boy, you hang out with 9 broke, you know who gonna be number 10."
Yeah.
So you hang out with 9 smoking and vaping folks.
You know, it'll
We
be
can
time.
kind of predict who's gonna be number 10. It's kind of hard.
It's true.
And the other
Yeah,
thing,
rise above it.
and the other thing on that is that you could be a non-smoker, man, but get affected by
The second.
secondhand smoke.
That's right. Yeah.
I have a story about I have a cousin who was married. She was female, right? And she was married to this brother who was really health conscious. He used to jog every day. He never smoked, you know, but she was a smoker, you know. He died from lung cancer about 15 years before her.
I'm so sad to hear that.
Yeah, it's a sad
I
story.
hate to hear that.
Yeah,
I've
it's-
heard those stories before too, and
Yeah, second cousin of mine, you know.
wow.
And he was known for being, you know, for being an athlete and being a healthy guy and whatnot, you know. But
Yeah,
I think the secondhand smoke got him.
absolutely.
Dang.
It's real.
So you're not only affecting yourself, you're affecting the people around you. You know.
And you got kids in the house.
That's right.
It's,
They even got third hand smoke.
They
Yeah,
do
I'm not
have
gonna
third.
lie. That is, I know I'm at working on this work podcast, but one of the things that kind of send me to like belligerence. I become very belligerent if you fire up a cigarette around me or some kids. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna confront you.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna be polite about it.
Right.
You spark
yeah.
you spark up a cigarette because my daughter plays softball, and like some folks think because you outside,
That's
like
right, yeah.
you can like spark up and like
Yeah, right. Ain't gonna-
take that over there. Because if I'm the volunteer third base coach and I don't know nothing about softball, but I'm standing next to a kid on the field and I'm smelling your cigarette, that means this kid I'm standing next to is smelling your cigarette. That means the kids that's in between me and you, that's sitting on the bench in the dugout is smelling your cigarette. These babies can't protect themselves.
That's right. That's right.
These babies is inhaling
They don't
this-
have a choice.
They don't have
You
no
took
choice.
their choice away.
Right.
Yeah.
And now somebody has to stand up for them.
Yeah, that's right.
And
On the same note, what gets me is sometimes I've seen quite a few times
the stroller.
baby stroller, pushing a baby stroller.
Yeah.
That really.
Yeah.
I just want to get out the car and go over there and snatch the cigarette.
I swear to God.
Yeah. That's right.
I swear to God.
And we want to take the, this came up a lot with the youth as well, is a lot of those habits, and we started to shift away from cigarettes being normalized, because they were for decades and decades. It was normal. It was normalized. And then, again, that these companies found a way to normalize a new products of vape. And the youth really self-identified that with us. And how do we now, that begs the question again, is that we're all asking ourselves, is we're trying to take back the messaging and establish that it's not normal. Not everybody needs to do it.
How do we mobilize against it effectively? That's right. How do we mobilize? How do we get the word out? How do we really? We have to do a countercultural thing.
Yes.
This is
Very true.
We have to almost do like a jazz event with like sponsoring.
do the music. Yeah, we can.
That's
do a little
right.
something. Maybe the 28th would be a good day.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, maybe something like this.
There may be something that we have up our sleeve, and that's exactly a
Maybe
counter.
something like this.
Something like this.
Right.
Man, you pulled that up.
And in
fast.
my spiel earlier, I'm not sure if I mentioned that. Yeah, that's really. I think it's a first of its kind in Buffalo. Imagine it's a jazz fest, if you will. We hope to do it bigger and better in years to come. But it's a jazz concert, jazz event sponsored by, hosted by anti-tobacco companies. And so that's really where we're at.
And you're gonna have plenty of literature or handouts.
We sure are.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have lots of literature to hand out. And what else? We missed.
So lots of stuff. Food. We're gonna have food.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna be food
28th.
trucks there. Yes. So
28th is gonna be a really good event. So
y'all join us.
yeah, make sure y'all stop by, register.
So real quick, we want folks definitely to register again for our event that's going to be taking place Saturday, June 28th. And it's going to be at 589 Ellicott Street, Buffalo, New York. We will have live jazz sets by our very own brother Sabu, and we're also going to have some performances from the youth Love Supreme School of Music.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, we're gonna do a little open.
We're
Yeah,
incorporating the youth in the event, and also to special mention that Joel will be on keys that day as well. So
playing a little bit, you know,
got
doing
some
my part.
in-house.
Do a little something. You know, do a little something.
A
something.
little something, you know, to help my friends, you know.
We'll have a quartet going.
Yeah, so it's going to be a multi-generational
Absolutely.
jazz event.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And because we're really pushing that message that smoking it isn't cool anymore.
It
Ain't that
isn't
what
cool.
you said?
It's
It isn't
not cool
It's not
anymore.
cool anymore. So I really appreciate you for taking time out of your busy schedule for joining us, Brother
Yes.
Sabu. It's been a pleasure meeting you, learning more about your story, hearing
So much, yes.
Yes, just the knowledge, the wisdom, the passion that you speak with. And I also, before we get out of here, I got to get your skincare routine too.
That health and wealth. He's been
Yeah,
taking
I
care
know,
of
man.
himself for
I'm
decades.
like, man, I think I might have more wrinkles than I'm 34. Like,
That's a testament right there, right?
yeah, so true testament to taking care of yourself. I appreciate you definitely for sharing your talents, your ability, your knowledge, your wisdom with me and with our audience. My co-host, anything else that you want to say?
No, just reciprocating the piggybacking off of the thank yous, man. Thank you for coming by, and more to come the 28th. I'm excited for it.
Honor and a pleasure. Or when we always say, once you're with Buffalo Center for Health Equity, you're with us for life. So.
I love it. I love it.
Stuck.
Yeah. Any other words you want to say to our audience?
Well, I'd just like to express my deep gratitude for you guys and what you're doing. And it warms my heart to see, young people who are thinking correctly, who are taking things into consideration. Because a lot of people just don't consider, go beyond the surface, And so I love the theme, jazz and justice, because there's always been an undercurrent in our music of seeking justice, And I think it was Wynton Marsalis that described the jazz band as a perfect example of democracy. It's a democratic institution, where everybody's rights are observed, and everybody has the right to speak on the instrument. But it's a collective,
Right.
It's a collective, and it reminds us that unity is not uniformity, but it is a relationship of differences. And that's the best thing about our music,
That's good.
Unity is not uniformity. It's a relationship of differences.
Love that.
All right.
Wow, thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Next time I'll be a little better prepared.
No, this is perfect.
Came with the heaters,
Drop the
man.
wisdom
Yes, sir.
and the love, and we appreciate you so much. Thank you again.
And we look forward to having you back to recap the event sometime
right.
later on this summer and promote the next one and talk about how successful this event was that we're having upcoming again Saturday, June 28th. So again, for the Buffalo Center for Health Equity, my name is Sherman Webb-Middlebrooks, lifelong Buffalo resident, full-time black man. This has been the Igniting Hope podcast, and in the words of my hero, the honorable late great Jerry Springer, take care of yourselves and each other. Peace.
Bye.
Peace out. Thank you.
Awesome.
That was great.
Thank you. That was really awesome.
Ooh,
Really awesome.
get a stretch.
That was my favorite one.
So was this live broadcast?
So it's not live, but
It'll be.
chop it up and
Oh.
Yeah, let me know when it's on. I'd like to.